I want to start today by asking you to do something a little weird. I want you to visualize a clock,
Okay.
but not the one on your wall, and definitely not the one on your phone. I want you to visualize the biological clock inside a single kernel of corn,
A corn seed?
a corn seed. You put that seed in the soil, and it has a mandate hard-coded into its DNA. It takes exactly 100 days, give or take a little sunshine, to go from a dry kernel to a mature harvest.
Right. You can't rush it.
You can't scream at it to grow faster. You can't bribe it with more water. Nature just has a timeline. An egg takes 21 days to hatch. Water freezes at 0 and boils at 100. There's a rhythm to it.
It's the ultimate schedule. And it is a schedule that we certainly didn't write, and we definitely do not have the admin privileges to edit.
Exactly. But here is the premise of the deep dive we are going on today. Humans are the only species arrogant enough to try and break that schedule.
We try to force the harvest in 5 days.
Yes, we do. We try to freeze water at room temperature, metaphorically speaking. And according to the stack of documents we are looking at today, that refusal to accept the timeline, that violation of the way of nature, is the root cause of basically every problem we face.
Poverty, disease, anxiety, war.
All of it. It all stems from bad timing.
It is a bold claim, a very all-encompassing claim. Today we're exploring the writings of the philosopher Xu Feng. We're looking at his concept of the way of nature, or the Tao, specifically within the context of the Lifechanyuan movement.
And just a heads up for you listening, this isn't your standard self-help guide, not at all.
No.
We are talking about a philosophy that blends ancient Taoist thought, some very specific and controversial social restructuring ideas, and get this, a complete reinterpretation of quantum mechanics.
It is a unique worldview, to say the least, and as always, our mission here is to impartially unpack these texts. We aren't here to endorse a movement or, preach a religion.
No. We're just here to look at the arguments Xu Feng presents, which, frankly, challenge a lot of modern assumptions about how society, physics, and biology all fit together.
So let's go back to that corn seed.
Yes, let's. Because Xu Feng uses this biological constant to explain why our modern obsession with getting rich quick is actually a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. This is where he discusses sudden wealth. If you look at nature, nothing accumulates value instantly. That corn needs 100 days of sunlight, water, nutrients. It needs the process.
But humans, we love the lottery, we love high-frequency trading, we love that idea of the first bucket of gold just appearing overnight.
I mean, who doesn't want to win the lottery?
It's the universal dream. You buy the ticket, you quit your job, you're on a beach.
According to this text, you shouldn't want to. In fact, you should fear it. Xu Feng argues that sudden wealth violates the way of nature because it bypasses the law of energy conservation.
So you haven't put in the work.
You haven't inputted the energy required to sustain that output. He describes it as leading to twisted mental states and inflated desires.
The text gets pretty specific here, doesn't it? It's not just about, feeling guilty or having imposter syndrome.
No, it's more tangible than that.
It suggests people who get this wealth often end up with strained relationships, severe anxiety, and, well, statistically, they often lose it all or face some kind of catastrophe, prison, kidnapping, ruin.
It's almost as if the universe snaps back like a rubber band. It's the concept of equilibrium.
Okay.
If you try to force corn to mature in 5 days by blasting it with chemicals, you don't get corn. You get a dead plant. The text applies this logic to our psychology. If you haven't built the vessel to hold the wealth through time and effort, the wealth will just crush the vessel.
It disrupts your internal Tao. And he extends this idea, this acceptance of the timeline, to the ultimate fear, the fear of death.
This was a heavy part of the reading, but also very poetic. The argument is that fearing death is as irrational as fearing the sun setting or an egg hatching. It's just a phase transition.
He says 99% of people fear it.
And that fear makes us timid, anxious, and easily manipulated.
He compares it to walking through a door.
Right, precisely. If you understand the way of nature, you view death simply as exiting one room and entering another. He calls it opening a door to a new journey. The only reason we fear it is because we're attached to the form of life, not the essence of it.
That's a comforting thought, but usually hard to practice when you're staring into the abyss.
Yeah.
However, the text links this fear directly to how we structure our societies. Let's pivot to his analysis of poverty. He draws a really interesting parallel here between economic poverty and biological isolation.
This is one of the more sociological arguments in the text. So Leffing asks the simple question, why are some places poor and others prosperous? And he doesn't look at GDP.
Yeah.
He looks at nature again. Nature thrives on biodiversity. You don't see a healthy forest with just one type of bug or one type of tree. Monocultures are weak, they die easily. It's the mix that creates resilience.
And he applies that to nations. He argues that closed societies, and by extension closed minds, remain poor. He actually cites the United States here,
Yeah, that was interesting.
attributing its historical prosperity not to policy or geography, but to the fact that it embraced immigrants, different ethnicities, and different faiths.
The quote that stood out to me was, "The one who steals will not become wealthy, and the one who treats guests well will not be poor." It's the idea that openness aligns with the Tao.
And isolation violates it.
Yeah, if you close your door to the world to protect what you have, you're actually closing your door to the natural flow of energy. You stagnate.
Speaking of things flowing correctly,
Mm.
or failing to flow,
Hmm.
let's talk about health. Because Huifeng drops a massive theory here. He calls it the Goldbach conjecture of disease.
Right.
Now, for context, the Goldbach conjecture is one of the oldest unsolved problems in math. It implies a fundamental unbreakable rule. So why use that name for disease?
He's implying that the rule of health is as absolute as math. He essentially says, if you are sick, you have violated the way of nature. Period.
And conversely,
Conversely, if you strictly follow the way of nature, you will be disease-free.
that puts a lot of responsibility on the individual. It almost sounds like victim blaming. If I catch the flu, is that a moral failing on my part?
In this philosophy, yes, but maybe not moral in the Western religious sense. It's more of a structural failing.
Okay, what's a structural failing?
He's not just talking about eating the wrong food or failing to exercise, though he does mention rising with the sun and resting with the sunset. He's talking about mental states. He lists things like anger, greed, jealousy, aggressiveness.
As violations of nature.
Right. These negative states disrupt your internal order, your frequency, if you will, and the signal of that disruption is physical illness.
So the illness is just the dashboard light blinking. The actual problem is, under the hood, maybe I'm holding onto a grudge or stressing over money.
Exactly. Illness is the feedback mechanism saying you veered off the path. The cure, in his view, isn't just medicine, it's realigning your consciousness with the Tao.
Okay, so if illness is a signal of being out of sync, we need to understand what being in sync actually looks like. And this is where the text takes a hard turn into metaphysics.
This is where we leave the cornfield and enter the quantum realm, and it gets fascinating.
I'll say,
Xuefeng defines the Tao as having 8 characteristics, but the first one he dives into is holographic order.
holographic order. It sounds like science fiction. Can we break that down? What does he mean by holographic?
Think about a physical hologram. If you take a picture of a bird on a holographic film and you cut that film in half, you don't lose half the bird.
You can still see the whole bird in the smaller piece.
You can. If you cut it again, the whole bird is still there, just fainter. Each piece contains the image of the whole.
And Xuefeng is arguing the universe works the same way.
Exactly. He says the universe is a single interconnected entity where the whole is present in every part. The text uses the metaphor of a divine net.
It has big meshes, so it looks like things can slip through.
But actually, nothing slips through. No secrets, no small actions.
The examples he gives are wild. He says an ant moving its leg is inextricably linked to an elephant drinking water on another continent.
Or the classic chaos theory example. A butterfly flapping its wings in Alaska is linked to a storm at the Cape of Good Hope.
Right, the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
But he takes it a step further into karma and causality.
A big step. He connects your back pain today to a mouse you might have killed 500 years ago in a past life. It's the idea that time and space are not barriers. Everything creates a ripple.
So every action is recorded in the structure of the universe.
Which leads to his critique of modern science, specifically the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Right. Standard physics tells us the subatomic world is random.
Correct. Heisenberg essentially says you can't know the position and speed of a particle at the same time. There is fundamental randomness, Brownian motion at the bottom of reality. And a lot of people use this to say, well, the universe is random, so human destiny is random.
But Xuefeng says not so fast.
He argues that while the micro might seem random, the macro is deterministic. His analogy is simple. If you plant a watermelon seed, you get a watermelon.
You never get a rose.
Never. That is certainty. The outcome is encoded in the structure.
He also uses the magnet analogy, which I found really helpful to visualize this.
Oh yeah, that one's great.
He says if you have a pile of iron filings, they are messy, they're random, but if you introduce a magnetic coil,
They all align. He equates the tarot to that magnetic coil. Sufeng believes that by following the Tao, your life stops being random Brownian motion and it becomes directed.
He says he can guide people to a specific destination, the Celestial Islands continent.
It's not random if you are aligned with the Force.
And then, just when I thought I wrapped my head around macro-determinism, he brings in quantum entanglement to explain romantic relationships.
This is the concept of the other half. In physics, entanglement means two particles are linked across vast distances. One spins up, the other spins down, instantly.
Faster than light.
Faster than light. Lifeng applies this to the human soul. He says every person has an anti-human, or an other half, somewhere in the universe.
Anti-human sounds ominous, but he means it like matter and antimatter, right? A counterpart.
Yes, a structural counterpart. He argues that if you are in pain, your other half feels it. If they are anxious, you feel anxious, even if you've never met them.
So those days you wake up sad for no reason.
Might actually be the state of your other half bleeding through the connection.
Wow. That completely redefines the search for a soulmate. It's not just about romance. It's about energetic equilibrium.
Correct. The goal is to find this person to achieve self-harmony. It ties back to that yin and yang concept. You aren't structurally complete until you align with that entangled partner.
Okay, so we have this holographic universe, we have entangled souls, and a deterministic destiny if we align with the Tao. How do we actually live in this world without messing it up?
This is where he talks about non-action, or wu-wei.
And usually when people hear non-action, they think of lying on a couch watching TV.
Right, doing nothing. But that is a massive misunderstanding. Sufeng contrasts non-action, wu-wei, with purposeful action, yu-wei.
And purposeful action is what modern society is built on. Set a goal, hustle, grind, force the outcome, the make it happen mentality.
And the text calls that the way of the foolish. It's driven by ego and desire. It's trying to paddle upstream.
So non-action is becoming the water.
Exactly. It means aligning completely with objective laws so that you aren't struggling against reality. You still act, but the action is effortless because it's timed perfectly with the environment.
There's a really striking description of what a person looks like when they attain this state, the Tao achiever. The text says they are like a mirror.
This is a crucial metaphor. A mirror doesn't have an opinion. If a beautiful flower is in front of it, it reflects a flower. If a pile of dung is in front of it, it reflects dung.
Doesn't try to make the dung look like a flower.
It doesn't judge the flower as better. It just reflects reality exactly. The text says if the scenery cries, they cry. If the scenery's angry, they're angry. They don't use cleverness to hide their feelings.
So no smiling when you should be angry just to be polite.
Nope. That flies in the face of so much social conditioning where we're taught to suppress negative emotions to be professional.
Shuifeng argues that suppression is purposeful action. It's fake. It requires energy to maintain the mask.
Right. He says a true Tao achiever is like an innocent child. They display instincts without moral judgment. They're happy, they laugh, they're upset, they cry. Once the moment passes, the mirror is clear again.
There's no filter of ego trying to manipulate the situation.
None.
This leads to a point that I found really controversial in the text. The idea that kindness isn't what we think it is.
This is the section on contention. The source says that anyone who argues, debates, or contends, even for a good cause, is unkind.
Even for a good cause. So if I'm arguing for civil rights or fighting against injustice, the text says I'm in the wrong.
According to this philosophy, yes. Because contention is a struggle for energy. It's an attempt to impose your will on someone else's reality. The text says, truth never contends.
Gravity doesn't argue with you. It just is.
Exactly. If you have to scream to prove your point, you've already left the path of the Tao. Why waste the energy?
That is a tough pill to swallow for anyone who values activism. It seems to suggest passivity.
Or maybe preservation of energy, which transitions us perfectly into the mechanics of this universe. The text breaks everything down into three elements: consciousness, structure, and energy.
Right. And energy seems to be the currency here. The text has a very specific warning about energy. Do not hoard material energy.
Which means wealth, possessions, stuff. Shuifeng argues that if you want to become a celestial being, which is the ultimate goal here, hoarding material energy weighs you down. It anchors you to the physical plane.
It closes the door to heaven.
Because your frequency is too heavy. But then, and this was a surprise, he talks about sexual energy, and he takes the opposite approach from a lot of traditional spiritual practices.
All right, monks are celibate. They retain the seed to build power.
He flips that completely. Shuifeng argues that consuming sexual energy is actually better. He says hoarding it causes irritability, stagnation, and imbalance. Releasing it freely within the context of love reduces desire and balances the mind. It clears the static.
Which brings us to the second home. This isn't just a theoretical philosophy. The text describes a place called Lifechanyuan, where people actually live this way.
It's described as a communal setting, a paradise on earth. No marriage, no private possessions, collective labor.
And the health claims are massive. The source claims residents don't get sick.
They attribute that to the total lack of stress. I mean, think about it. If you don't worry about food, housing, or aging because the community covers it, and you engage in romantic love and sexual expression freely,
You eliminate the negative mental states that, according to the theory, cause disease.
you're engineering a society that forces you into alignment with nature.
And Wu Feng places this in a grand timeline of evolution. He says humanity started in sensibility, the Lemuria era, then rationality, Atlantis, then intellectuality, which is where we are now.
Obsessed with logic, science, law. And the next step is spirituality.
So the argument is that we're trying to think our way through life with logic,
Yeah.
but we need to move to feeling our way through with spirit.
Yes. Rationality makes you cautious, it makes you plan, it creates anxiety. Spirituality, according to the text, makes you act according to nature laying eggs when it's time to lay eggs. It's a return to instinct, but a higher, more conscious form of it.
It's a lot to take in. We've gone from a corn seed to quantum entanglement to a communal paradise. But if we zoom out, the core message seems to be about surrender.
Surrender to the rhythm. The text keeps coming back to the idea that the universe has a program, a Tao. You can fight it, like trying to force a harvest, and you will suffer.
Or you can align with it, like a mirror reflecting scenery, and find peace.
That's the crux of it. The illusion is that we are in control. The reality, according to these sources, is that we are part of a massive holographic flow. Our only real choice is whether to swim with the current or against it.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final concept from the source material that really blew my mind. It's the idea of horizontal time.
Oh, this is a fascinating visual. It completely reimagines how we age.
So we usually think of time as vertical past, present, future. We are falling forward, getting older every second. But Wu Feng suggests we can step out of that.
How?
He uses the analogy of a peach. If you leave a peach on the table, subject to the vertical flow of time and decay, it rots. That's inevitable.
But if you put it in the refrigerator, it stays fresh. It enters a different state where the decay slows or stops.
He calls that horizontal time, a state of preservation. He argues that by entering a specific state of consciousness, basically checking into this refrigerator of the mind, you can stop the aging of the soul. You can live in an eternal moment.
It implies that aging is a symptom of living in the material vertical rush. If you step sideways into the spiritual, you exit the stream of decay.
So the question I want to leave you with today is this. If time is just a state of motion, like the text says, are you living vertically, rushing toward the harvest, counting down your 100 days, or can you find a way to step sideways into the refrigerator and just be?
It's a question worth pondering.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.